Real voices, true stories, and hope beyond the bars. I'm Amanda Panda, and this is Panda's Pathway. Let's begin.
Hello.
Hi, Amanda.
How are you?
I'm doing well. Yourself?
Oh, I'm good. Congratulations, by the way,
On?
on making parole.
It was definitely a lot of. It was a community effort. I'm not where I'm at today. I didn't get here alone. That's for sure. I got a strong and supportive wife that helped create this environment, and I got a strong community of friends in here that we believe in accountability. So I'm excited, a bit nervous. I've never been an adult in society, but do I believe I'm capable? Absolutely. So uh, I'm ready. I was already looking at motorcycles and stuff, going crazy, and my wife was like, "Nope, can't have none of that yet." So all right, whatever.
Motorcycles. Nice, nice. Okay. So let's start with telling people who you are. How'd you get there?
Um,
What happened?
okay. Well, my name is Alfonso Daniel Hall. Uh, I'm 35 years old. Something interesting about me: I was born June 21st, 1989, and I share the same birthday with my mother. Um, how I got here, that's a question that you know um, it's a story of my life, I guess I can say, because I'm so accustomed to hearing people externalize responsibility. I got here because of certain people, places, and things. But at the end of the day, it's really because of my choices that I made. So I wrote my story down specifically for you, so I can share it with you, and we can go from there. See if you have any questions. So it says the beliefs and emotions that motivated me to go down the wrong path trace back to my early childhood and adolescent years. The first thing that I can recall from my childhood is that I was born with a severe case of asthma and eczema, both of which made me believe that I was an inconvenience. Because whenever I would need help from my mother, she would seemingly get frustrated and annoyed with me. This belief was further reinforced because whenever I would need help from my mother, um, she would just yell to my siblings for them to come and help me. Um, Whoever was in trouble would have to tend to my needs. It is due to this belief that I started to feel less than my other siblings. As the youngest of four, I felt unequal, unloved, and as if I was to blame for being born that way. Ultimately, I felt shame and emotional pain, and I developed self hate. I learned early on that asking for help meant people getting frustrated and annoyed with me, and that it was easier to suffer in silence. I'm about 8 years old at this time. As time progressed, specifically between the ages of 8 and 9, I began to understand that my family was poor. Going to school at this age, the other kids would point out the differences between them and I. I always had to carry my asthma inhaler with me. I was unable to run around and play with the other kids. My clothes were hand me downs from my older brothers. Most of the time, they were ill fitting, and all the other kids would make fun of me for being different, or as they would say, not normal, whatever normal is, right? Um, this ridicule from my peers contributed to my feelings of being unequal and ashamed, and I started to develop self pity and the core belief that my life was not fair. And I started to resent the other kids because I felt inferior having to carry the burden of poverty as a child. Um, I want to pause right there and talk about that warped core belief that my life's not fair. Not that just life wasn't fair, but that my life wasn't fair. Later on in life, I would utilize this warped core belief of my life not being fair to justify all my bad behavior. I get to take this and I get to trample over people's rights because my life wasn't fair. At the age of 9 is when I first started to knowingly rebel because of these beliefs and emotions. I was experiencing an asthma attack and was afraid because I couldn't understand why I was unable to breathe. When I sought my mother for help with tears in my eyes, I was met with frustration and anger from her and was told that only girls cry, which reinforced my belief of being an inconvenience, but this also made me feel helpless. My mom in turn yells for my sister, who is the eldest of my siblings, to come and tend to my needs and leaves out of her bedroom window. Not knowing how to process this event or emotions, I got angry, acted out, and broke my mother's bedroom window. Due to this rebellious behavior, I gained a form of attention from my mother that made me feel loved and excited. And although I was now in trouble, those feelings of being loved and excited provided an emotional rush that trumped any fear of any punishment. Thus, this rebellious behavior for attention and the feelings of being loved and excited overflowed from my home to my community. So I'm trying my best right now to kind of paint a picture of my childhood home and how this led me to become the criminal, drug addict, gang member that I once was. So whenever I felt less than, unequal, ridiculed, ashamed, being treated unfairly, or any other type of emotional pain, I would get angry and act out. This anger would display itself in different ways, and this is where my reward factor started to develop. Whenever I would feel less than or unequal, I would get angry and begin to steal things in order to mask my poverty. Now that I temporarily had new shoes and clothes, I would gain a false sense of self-esteem, acceptance, and a sense of self-worth. However, this acceptance came from negative influences. Most of these negative peer influences were kids that grew up in the same neighborhood as me. Some were relatives. After choosing to hang out with these peers and relatives for some time, I was introduced to the local gang at the age of 12. It was between the ages of 9 and 12 that a whole new world was opened up to me, and it was the world of crime. This included thefts, assaults, drug dealings, and robberies, which are my commitment offense. More importantly, I learned that my family had a huge role in this world and in the local gang. I learned that my mother was a criminal, drug addict gang member. My eldest brother was a criminal, drug addict gang member. And in so joining the same gang was viewed as a rite of passage by me. And by me doing so, I would continue to gain the forms of attention and acceptance that made me feel loved and excited, not only from my mother, but now also from the peers that I was surrounding myself with. Joining the gang at the age of 12 was another hallmark moment in my life. I remember my eldest brother being there during my initiation, and upon the conclusion of me getting jumped by 4 teenagers, I was embraced by my brother and in the local gang. It was this embracement that gave me a sense of belonging, and the same rang true upon me returning home battered and bruised. When my mother seen me walk in the house with my brother, no words were exchanged because my mother's look said it all. I felt and believed I now had my mother's approval and acceptance. In conclusion, when looking back to review my past, I have been able to determine that I processed and interpreted my childhood in a very personal way, and this is where my anger came from. I took everything very personal. I viewed every event of my life through a victim's lens. I externalized responsibility, and this is how I came to justify my criminal process. So that's kind of me in a nutshell.
Wow. That's a lot.
It was.
My God. Oh, that's heartbreaking. So it was a rite of passage. Wow.
For the gangs, yes.
Yeah. That's crazy.
Yeah, and there came a point in time in my life where I said, I remember it's 2019. I'm already in prison. I've done my, tour, for lack of a better term, of the prison systems, of the security housing units in the California prison system. And I get into an altercation with a man, and I'm sitting in a cage, pepper sprayed. And this is the first time in my life that it had ever hit me. In 2 weeks from this day, my mother, my sister, and my wife are coming to visit me. And this is the first time in my life that I felt embarrassed for the things that I was doing, the things that I used to glorify, the violence, the gang activity, the status and reputation that I would hold on to so dearly because I didn't know who Alfonso was as an individual. And this is the first time that I was embarrassed, and I realized I'm in a cage, in a prison, because I don't know how to behave like an adult. Something has to give, and that's kind of where my journey started, and to where I'm at today, and what ultimately got me to being found suitable for parole by the grace of God.
Yeah. So what was your initial sentencing? Like, how long have you been in?
So my initial sentencing, I left Riverside County Superior Court with 120 years and 8 months. I wasn't eligible for parole during my natural life expectancy, and once again, not taking responsibility, not holding myself accountable, I utilized that sentence as, well, I'm never getting out of prison, so why the hell do I care? Why should I have to change?
Yeah.
And that fueled me, because at that time in my mind, I didn't understand what responsibility was. I didn't understand what accountability was. And I said, I would say I didn't even hurt anybody. But yet today I understand the impact and magnitude of the crimes that I committed.
Yeah. Wow. And so how long have you been incarcerated now in total?
17 years.
17 years. Okay.
Yeah.
Man, and you've made parole. So that's quite the turning point you had there then.
Well, one of the advice, some of the best advice that I was given was by my friend. His name was Henry. He's still one of my mentors today. I consider him like an older brother. We eventually became cellmates, but I was a prideful, stubborn, egotistical person, which was really just masking all of my insecurities. And I didn't want to hear nothing from nobody. Like, you can't tell me nothing because you've never walked a mile in my shoes. So the first thing he told me was, hey, Alfonso, you're a loser. You've been following losers your whole life, dude, and you keep running into that same brick wall over and over and over again. He goes, so when you're ready to do something different, come let me know. And I walked away. Yeah, whatever, dude. You know, a shaky sense of self hides very well behind a false air of respect. And that's what I did. Yeah, whatever, dude. You could say what you want to say. So I walked away, but in my heart I knew, damn, that's true. But that meant I had to really address my low self-esteem, my insecurities, my identity, because I was no longer such and such from said gang. I really had to understand who Alfonso was as an individual and really reach back, honestly, to that 8 and 9-year-old boy who was going through those traumatic experiences, to get him out of all of that stuff that I built around him to protect him from him getting hurt. And that's how it was for me. It was, okay, well, I wasn't half-stepping as a gang member, so I'm not going to half-step in recovery.
Yeah, definitely. Wow. Well, this really did take 15 minutes. Martin was like, you're not going to have very many questions. It's going to go quick. You'll be surprised.
I mean, I'm available as much as you need. However, you and Martin determine what's the best way for us to continue to move forward. I'm invested in this. I want to help. I would love to educate the community about, the different aspects of this, and about what rehabilitation is, and about the hard work it does take to be found suitable for parole. It's not just a free pass of us getting out. It does take hard work, and it's not anything we're entitled to.
Yeah, definitely. Okay. Well, I'll get with him. I'll see when we can reconnect the call, and maybe another day or something like that, and we'll go from there.
Okay. Thank you, Amanda.
Thanks. Bye. Good night.
Bye-bye.